Chapter 19. Snow White followed her. She had never set foot in the queen's private space before. She knew the woman would spend hours in there talking to someone, or something, but until then, she had never known what the room held. Now she saw that it was empty, save for a large ornate mirror. Without being told, Snow White knew the mirror was magical. The queen stood in front of it, frantic and frenzied. Instead of escaping, she was pleading with the mirror, showing off her face, her form, her figure. She seemed to be trying to appeal to it with her exquisite features. "Look at me!" the queen begged the mirror. "Look!" The queen held up her hand, showing off the rings that she wore on nearly every long, perfectly manicured finger. Dazzling, flawless, every inch. "I am still the fairest." But the phantom in the mirror interrupted the queen. Snow White watched in stunned silence as the ghostly face appeared and began to speak. "Your Majesty, famed is thy beauty, but it goes no further than skin. For Snow White, beauty grows from deep within. And so, my queen, at last you see, you will always be more fair, or she will always be more fair than thee." Snow White stepped close enough to the queen that a reflection appeared behind her in the mirror. The moment that the queen saw her, she boiled over with fury. "You lie!" she screamed at the mirror. She no longer looked like her queenly self. She looked disheveled and scary. Backing away from the traitorous mirror, she shook her head and smashed it with her fists. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, glass raining down, leaving an empty frame except for a few jagged shards. The rest lay on the ground like a jigsaw puzzle that could never be solved. Seeing what she had done, the queen sank to the ground. Her fingers tore at the pieces, trying to find ones that fit. But as she worked, her true image appeared in the fragments. Gone was the beautiful queen Snow White had known. Now she saw the hag staring up at her from the broken mirror. Her eyes were on separate pieces, her mouth on another. She was like a bizarre painting that made no sense. As Snow White watched, with a mixture of horror and relief flooding her, she saw the queen's body begin to change. It began to disintegrate like the rose she had made earlier, turning to ash, falling to where her feet had been, and fading in the wind. Suddenly, the pieces of the mirror began to move, rearranging themselves and fitting together like a puzzle. As they did so, the evil queen was swept inside the mirror, screaming the whole time. And then suddenly, her scream was gone, and there was utter silence. The queen was no more. Snow White stared at the newly reformed mirror, her mind reeling as the light inside it swirled to green. In the end, she had not had to destroy the queen. The queen had done that herself. With her own ugliness and hatred, she had brought her reign to a close. Despite all the evil the woman had done, Snow White felt a flicker of sadness for her. If only she had tried to offer kindness, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But the queen had shown her true self. She was fearful, unfair, weak, and a liar. She had never loved the king or the kingdom. She had only loved herself, and in the end, that had been her downfall. Taking a deep breath, Snow White lifted her chin. She knew now that her father would never return, but he lived in her. His lessons were a part of who she was and how she would rule, if the people would accept her. But she could not deny that the queen, too, had made her the woman she was today, because without the queen's darkness, Snow White would never have appreciated the light. Without the queen's coldness, Snow White would never have appreciated the warmth of her friends. Without the queen's ugliness, Snow White would never have discovered the true beauty of following her own heart. While she would not cry tears for the queen, she would not let her death be in vain. Staring at the reflection in the mirror, Snow White saw that she now wore the crown of the queen. Snow White left the mirror chamber and walked back into the larger room. A smile lit her face as she saw the huntsman and the guards waiting. Then Jonathan and her 7 friends burst into the room. The huntsman approached. She waited for him, giving him a warm smile when he bowed his head. There was a beat, and then, one by one, those gathered, from Jonathan to Dopey, from Paul the guard to William, bowed their heads. Snow White paused. Their message was clear. They did want her, and the weight of that fell on her shoulders. But it didn't cow her or make her feel scared. Instead, it filled her with wonder and awe. They saw in her what she had always been too fearful to see. They saw her bravery, her fearlessness, her fair and true heart. They saw that she could be a leader worthy of the kingdom. She walked onto the balcony and looked down at the courtyard. The whole village had gathered and was anxiously awaiting news. Snow White took a deep breath and stepped forward. Lifting her hand to her locket, she sent a silent thank you to her father and mother, and then she gazed back down at the people, her people. It was time to bring light back to the kingdom. With a smile curving her lips, Snow White reached for Jonathan, whose expression mirrored her own, and in front of everyone, they shared a triumphant kiss.